Yes, sir. Please identify yourself. I want you to communicate, but we are running short of time, so.
I understand, Mr.
And we
Chairman.
still got a lot of folks to talk.
I'll be brief.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the distinguished committee, I'm Andrew Schlafly. I'm General Counsel for the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, which is a national group. And I may have as much experience as anyone nationwide looking at various medical boards in different states, hearing complaints from physicians, seeing how their procedures work. I've testified a number of times over in Texas before their legislative committees. And on a personal note, a little humorous, I hope, I grew up on the Mississippi River, seeing the Mississippi River outside of our house, and was fed catfish every Friday by my mother, who was Phyllis Schlafly, and some of you may know of her. She passed away about a year and a half ago. Louisiana, the Medical Board of Louisiana has been overzealous in some cases, and we've known that even before this legislation came on the horizon. We knew the Louisiana Medical Board has had a tendency to be overzealous and unfair to a number of physicians. I would have put it as one of the top 2 or 3 medical boards that are unfair to physicians at times. I'm not saying they're unfair to everybody, but at times they've been unfair. And we went and pulled some statistics while this hearing was going. The latest data we could find that's published on this was from 2009, 2011, and Louisiana was number 2 in the entire country in the most actions per physician that the board has taken. So it's an aggressive board when you put it in perspective nationwide. This bill is an excellent bill, and we haven't discussed as much as we should have, really, the contents of the bill, the provisions that are in here. They're just superb in protecting due process. And due process is a bipartisan issue. I've gotten a call from a Republican legislator in Texas asking me about this bill and how impressed he is with this bill and how he feels that once it gets passed here in Louisiana, he wants to get it passed in Texas to follow the lead that Louisiana did. And that's a Republican who's doing this. It's just due process right down the way. This could be in a textbook of when you want protections for due process, what would you do? Well, you'd give the accused notice. You'd make sure there's no bias. You'd make sure there's no ex parte communications. You'd make sure the person has access to the file. And all the debate we've had today about whether the doctor has access or not, well, let's make sure they have access. I mean, let's make sure they have access. I mean, there shouldn't be any objection to giving them access, and I don't think there would be. No anonymous hearsay. I mean, that's pretty fundamental. I think most people look at this and say, well, they're not doing that.
We have the bill, so you don't have to read it to us.
Okay, but it is a fantastic protection of due process that Republicans support, Democrats support. It's necessary to have safeguards against overzealous people, particularly with a medical license. We're an association of physicians, and we've had insightful comments about how much stress physicians are under already. And I can tell you firsthand in dealing with many of our members that when on top of their stress of practicing medicine, they get hit with a medical board complaint and an investigation by the medical board, many of them do go to the brink. And obviously we've heard testimony, some have committed suicide. Obviously not all of them commit suicide, but even the ones who don't commit suicide, it changes their life. They lose their enthusiasm. They get very disillusioned, and the stress is overwhelming. It just is. And you need due process protections, and the due process protections enhance the finding of truth. It's helpful in getting the bad doctors. To have good due process in procedure makes it more efficient and easier to get the bad doctors. So you're not wasting time and scarce resources in trying to harass or be overzealous against somebody. You know that all of your money that's being spent on the medical board is being channeled to get the bad doctors, which you can get when due process is in effect. There's nothing in this bill that interferes in any way with getting the bad doctors. What it does do is it protects the accused, the most vulnerable, the people who are good doctors but who are subjected to a bad faith complaint. And in Texas, they have passed some parts of this. They passed, for example, a law in Texas that says when it's an insurance company that files a complaint against the doctor, the Texas Medical Board is required to turn over a copy of that complaint to the doctor. That wasn't happening. And I asked the executive director in Texas when I had a deposition of her, because we had a lawsuit against the Texas Medical Board, and I asked her what happened to the number of complaints by insurance companies against doctors once that law passed. And she said it dropped enormously. Just that transparency. And don't you think that if a doctor is being subjected to a complaint by an insurance company, don't you think the doctor should know that? So that he can defend himself and say, yeah, the insurance company didn't want to pay the bill. That's why they complained, didn't want to pay the bill. But currently in Louisiana, insurance companies can complain against doctors, and the doctors have no right to know that. They have no ability to defend themselves against complaints by insurance companies against them, which have nothing to do with the quality of care. It's because the insurance companies don't want to pay the bill. And that's not right. That's not right to put a doctor through that stress. When the doctor's trying to help the patient, provides the services, and the insurance company doesn't want to pay the bill, the insurance company goes and complains to the medical board and sticks the medical board on the doctor. This is a tremendous bill that is really landmark legislation, and I urge everybody on this committee, Republican and Democrat, to support this bill. This will be historic. This could be in a textbook. Everything in here is the sort of due process that we would all want for ourselves, for our own children and relatives. It ensures that the process will be one of finding the truth, and that anything that's done in bad faith will get caught by these due process procedures and not be allowed to proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have some others, and again, I'm going to ask folks to be brief and still get their points across, of course, just because of our time limit. Catherine Stevens is Catherine. Okay, let me get.